President Donald Trump has been reshaping the world by putting America first during his second term. African countries have been hit by severe foreign aid cuts, higher tariffs, visa restrictions, and in the case of South Africa and Nigeria, unverified genocide and persecution claims. Well, tougher immigration has been the centerpiece of the Trump administration. As part of the crackdown, from next week, Nigerians, along with nationals from 74 other countries, will no longer get immigrant visas that grant them permanent residency in the U.S. But that's not the only U.S. policy change that has affected the country, as Palum David reports from Abuja.
On the first day of U.S. President Donald Trump's second term, he froze all foreign aid
The USAID is really corrupt.
and dismantled the aid agency. In response, Dr. Kalaiwo and his colleagues formed MedBridge International, an organization supporting underserved communities.
Literally everyone is volunteering right now since last year to do different things, to support other organizations, to do a lot of policy analysis and so on.
Nigeria has also been hit by tougher U.S. immigration policies. A presidential proclamation signed in late 2025 partially suspended visitor and student visas, citing security, document integrity issues, and concerns around people in the country too long. And the U.S. has announced it will suspend the processing of immigrant visas from Nigeria and 74 other countries from January 21st, saying they could require public assistance while living in the United States permanently.
Trade relations are also under pressure. Nigeria faces growing uncertainty over duty-free access to U.S. markets under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, that expired in September. Experts fear the loss of benefits coupled with new tariffs could reduce the country's oil and gas exports' competitive edge.
In late December, U.S. forces carried out joint airstrikes with Nigerian troops targeting Daesh-linked terrorists in Sokoto State. President Trump accused them of targeting and viciously killing primarily innocent Christians, accusations the Nigerian government rejects, saying that Muslims, Christians, and those of no faith are all targeted. And that's not the only change of hearts.
What he's looking for is minerals and energy. So it's purely transactional relationship. No longer talking about democracy, no longer talking about human rights, no longer talking about aid. In fact, specifically, he said they are going to discontinue foreign aid, which was demonstrated by defunding US aid and then changing it to trade and investment. So that's basically what I think it is. And then in the area of security too, they have issues with violent extremism, which is very critical. But then it's clearly also stated that they are going non-interventionist.
While many Nigerians remain uncertain about what the new global order will bring, many hope the government can fill the gaps left by aid cuts and improve security across the country. Palum David, Africa Matters, Abuja.
On the first day of his second term, Trump drastically cut most of America's foreign aid that supported critical health programs, including HIV/AIDS treatment, malaria, and maternal health. Aid agencies such as WFP and UNHCR say they've been forced to cut supplies for over 3 million refugees in Eastern Africa. President Trump has also pushed for tougher, more transactional trade deals with African nations. Now, last year, Washington signed a bilateral deal with the DRC, giving U.S. companies access to critical minerals in exchange for help in stabilizing the country's troubled east. In Lesotho, Trump imposed a 50% tariff, although it was later reduced to 15%. Now, this led to layoffs and factory closures. New U.S. tariffs on most African countries effectively ended the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which had allowed 32 African countries duty-free access to the American market. Trump's widely discredited claims of a genocide against white South Africans and accepting them as refugees in the U.S. strained diplomatic ties. He boycotted November's G20 in Johannesburg and said he won't invite them to the next one in Miami. The New America Foundation says that the U.S. has coordinated with Somali authorities and launched over 400 airstrikes and drone strikes and ground raids to kill suspected terrorists. In December, the U.S. and Nigerian military carried out joint airstrikes in northwest Nigeria on what it described as Daesh fighters who Trump says were targeting Christians. But Nigerian officials say it has nothing to do with a particular religion. Now, Trump has added U.S. travel restrictions to 26 African countries out of 39 countries globally, making it harder for them to apply for visas. Countries like Mali and Burkina Faso have responded by issuing a tit-for-tat bans on visas for U.S. citizens. And from January 21st, the State Department plans to suspend the processing of immigrant visas for 75 countries, citing public assistance concerns if they are allowed to live there permanently. Trump has largely stopped refugee admissions to the U.S. except for white South Africans. And nearly 2,500 Somalis in America with legal status and work authorizations have been told to leave or risk deportation by mid-March. Now, this follows a directive by the Trump administration to end the temporary protection status for Somali immigrants. Let's hear more from Professor Christopher Afoke Isike. He's the director of the African Center for the Study of the United States, University of Pretoria, South Africa. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Matters. Let's get straight into it. And what's been, the impact of Trump's America First policy on the continent, in your view?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me, Brenda. 1 year after Trump 2.0's Africa policy has been marked by a lot of uncertainty. We've seen a recalibration of long-standing partnerships, and then also a greater emphasis on strategic leverage over collaborative developments, which have had very significant implications for economic growth for Africa, democratic governance, support, and then geopolitical balance in the continent.
So, should the continent expect more from U.S. President Donald Trump?
Not necessarily. It depends on what each country wants. Remember, we have 54 countries. We've seen a strategic reorientation of the Trump administration that has shifted towards a transactional foreign policy with reduced multilateral engagement. And then we've also seen selective cooperation with certain countries. So this approach tends to be transactional and security oriented, with less emphasis on, sustainable institutional partnerships and more on direct strategic benefits, particularly for the U.S. in areas like resource access and geopolitical competition with China and Russia. So based on this, each country would have to reassess its relationship with the U.S. Based on what it has, because that's what the U.S. is going to be looking at for. But my view is that as acting individually as single countries, we will not be able to get much from the Trump administration, except we have a common African position on strategic minerals, on security and trade, which seem to be important to this administration.
So, talking about the policy shift, has it benefited African countries in any way?
Well, it depends also in some ways. You could say it has. And for me, the biggest benefit has been a call to order for how we do things, how we do our politics, how we, deal with ourselves as countries, and the need for us to begin to look more inwards than the dependency syndrome, which has characterized our relations with the United States.
Right. So let me pick your mind on this. Has the policy shift also affected the way the U.S. is viewed in the continent? And why should it matter?
Well, it's both ways. There are those who support the Trump administration, the presidency. There are many who see Trump's leadership as potentially stabilizing world politics, and others worry about the implications of his transactional foreign policy approach for trade, for aid, and multilateral relations with the continent. There are many people who support Trump, for example, for religious reasons, for conservative values. And then there are those who think that the US is rearing its imperialist head again. I mean, if you look at what he did with South Africa, relying on misinformation and disinformation to approach the country. We've seen a bit of that also in the Nigerian case, although there are those who will tell you that his intervention, just a tweet alone, for the first time in 65 years in that country, put the issue of Christian killings on their public agenda. So it's a mixed bag of depending on who's benefiting and what they're benefiting from his actions.
All right. And earlier on you had mentioned other superpower countries, which brings me to this question. I'd just like to pick your mind on this. So what does the US stand to lose with its policy shift? And do you think other foreign powers are feeling the vacuum that has been left by the United States?
Well, each one of them is also self-interested like the United States. So they don't necessarily support or oppose what Trump is doing based on any kind of principle, so long as it will benefit them. So for instance, there are countries like China, like Russia, who should have been more vocal in their criticism of Trump's invasion and abduction of a president of another country, as Venezuela now. But because of their future plans for, in the case of China, Taiwan, what in the case of Russia, what he's doing now in Ukraine, they are not taking those actions because they're actually probably happy about these kinds of actions. And so the simple answer to the question is that many of them are trying to stand up and fill up the vacuum, especially in regards to Africa. China is trying to do that soft power approaches to engage with the continent where America is pulling off. But in other instances where the world really needs leadership, America is vacating that leadership position. We're not seeing potential superpowers like China and Russia, trying to step in. They're all acting based on their self-interest and their personal relationship with Mr. Trump.
All right. So just based on what you're saying, shouldn't that not worry U.S. President Donald Trump, because the vacuum that America is leaving, it's being filled by other foreign powers when it comes to trade?
Well, Mr. Trump really doesn't care about those kinds of things. He's more interested in achieving what he wants to achieve, not necessarily for just America, but for himself. We have seen a convergence of two things here: Trumpism and then imperial greed. With Trumpism, you see personalized and assertive foreign policy based on his whims and caprices, on his idiosyncrasies. And I can tell you that he has a personal agenda to want to be amongst the best, if not the best, American president in American history, whatever that means. So this is a personal goal that fuels the audacious actions that he has been taking since he returned. He wants to do things that will put his name in history. And you've seen him talk about MAGA, Make America Great Again, and withdrawing from multilateralism. For him, that's how America is going to be strong, even though America's strength has been built over the last 80 years on the opposite of what he's doing now.
All right. And finally, let me pick your mind on this. Just from where you are right now, do you think that there could be a reset of Trump's Africa engagement for the rest of his second term?
Well, look, if you look at his recent national security strategy, I do not think so. It's a lot of focus on security and on minerals and reasserting U.S. dominance. We've seen a penchant for bilateral relations with different African countries, preferring to cancel AGOA, although AGOA has been renewed now by the legislative arm of government. We'll see whether he approves that. But I think he prefers a bilateral approach to dealing with African countries and depending on what he can get from each. So that's why I talked earlier about Africa coming together to develop a common African position on some of these engagements with the U.S.
All right. Thank you so much. Professor Christopher Afoke Isike. He's the director of the African Center for the Study of the United States, University of Pretoria, South Africa. Thank you for your time. To Uvira in the eastern DRC now, where the impact of the conflict is being felt far and beyond the front lines, despite M23's announced withdrawal. Now, residents say no one is addressing the security concerns. Prosper Heri Ngorora recently returned from there and brings us this report from Goma.
Clementine Baraka, a mother of 5, sells about 800 kilograms of beans every season. But she now struggles to sell even 300 kilograms because of an ongoing war that is threatening her family's survival.
We invest money to sow seeds. When we harvest, we take the food to the market, but there are no customers because there's no cash. Even though we have incurred expenses, it's a loss of income.
Cross-border trade with neighboring Burundi has also been disrupted after the M23 rebel group captured Uvira city in December, prompting Burundian authorities to shut the border due to security concerns.
We are suffering greatly. We used to go to Burundi to buy goods in bulk, but that is no longer possible. We are selling what is left in our warehouses.
Despite the announcement by M23 rebels that they have withdrawn from the city of Uvira, Congolese government says that the group has not fully pulled out. Kinshasa says M23 fighters are still in and around Uvira and accuses them to plan further attacks in new areas. The M23 says they don't want the Congolese army and its allies to return.
It's God Himself who watches over our safety. We have no one to whom we can bring our security concerns. We are like bats. If the Congolese government can, let it come and protect us.
With peace plans offering little immediate relief, banks closed and borders shut, people here say they are struggling to get by. Prosper Heri Ngorora, Africa Matters, Goma, DRC.
To Botswana next, where the rainy season in rural areas means preparing for the mopane caterpillar harvest. The edible insect is a critical source of food and income, but there are concerns over the exploitation of the resource. Mgondisi Dube reports from the capital, Gaborone.
At the break of dawn, Emma Mwakufi joins hundreds of other harvesters for a prickly peek of the mopane worm. The seasonal harvest offers many households an opportunity to put a meal on the table as the worm fetches good prices at the market. Pani or mopane worms, which are actually caterpillars, are eaten as a delicacy in many parts of southern Africa and are a great source of protein. But like many other mopane worm pickers this year, Mwakufi is disappointed.
We came to harvest the caterpillar worm, but we found that it has been depleted. The only way is to go back home. We face a lot of difficulties as we stay in the open. There is no water and it is raining.
Mwakufi says the little that they manage to gather is not enough to sell, so will be eaten at home. There is also concern that local buyers pay below market prices for mopane. Tsenelo Kitlobohile wants the government to regulate their sale.
South African buyers offer better prices. We face a lot of challenges in harvesting pine. There are snakes out there, but when we come here, local buyers offer low prices. There must be a market where pine is taken to, and all buyers must purchase it from there.
As harvesters spend long days in the bush collecting the worm, there is hope that this year's yield will be substantial, as it directly supports more than 10,000 people annually, with the insect being a critical source of protein and household income.
Tsepan Tapiso buys a 20-kilogram bag of the pani worm for $35 and resells for double the price on a busy highway.
The pani worm is in abundance this year, but a lot of people have flocked to harvest it. Otherwise, we could be making good profit.
The seasonal worms are also being impacted by climate change.
We're starting to see very unreliable rain patterns and just weather patterns. So we're seeing higher temperatures, which then means some of the larvae is not going the full process, which then also interrupts how many butterflies end up making more larvae for repeated cycles.
But people here hope this season's good rains will break the recent pani worm dry spell. Kondisi Dube, Africa Matters, Gaborone.
Well, the construction industry in the Gambia is facing a similar dry spell, but for different reasons. It makes up over 5% of the country's GDP, but a severe cement shortage is bringing projects to a halt and threatening the livelihoods of workers across the country. Maimuna Ba tells us more from Banjul.
A severe cement shortage is slowing construction nationwide. While cement is still available in some shops, rising prices are putting it out of reach for many builders.
Customers as well that have contracts with us, and we weren't able to, or we are not able to satisfy those contracts as a result of the shortage in cement. So it has really affected us as a company with regards to our projects and with regards to our income as well. That is the revenue that we get from these projects that we do.
It is not just companies that are being affected, but workers who rely on daily wages.
No work, because of the sources of the cement. It's a problem.
It is also becoming a problem for the economy.
Data from the Gambian Bureau of Statistics shows that cement is the most consumed imported product in the country, valued at $24 million in the first quarter of 2025 alone.
Only 3 companies are allowed to import cement, a policy that's meant to protect local industry. With no local production, these companies import cement in bulk, package and sell it. The price of a bag of cement has nearly doubled from about $5 to $9 recently. And economists warn that the current situation could very potentially slow national development.
Its economic impact is huge because there will be delays in projects. Both private and even public construction will be affected by the cement shortage. And eventually this will also slow down the capital formation of the country. It will create unemployment.
Several major construction and real estate projects have been put on hold. The government says the cement shortage is also caused by access challenges at the port of Banjul, meaning larger ships carrying cement cannot dock, and shipments are stuck at the port, as Banjul looks to hire a dredging company to restore supply.
The solution will be to allow competition. The many players we have, the better for us, because that alone will push prices downwards. And since the government is claiming to protect local industries, they can think about inviting more major potential investors in this industry to participate. And also the most important thing is policy and alignment.
Until policy and supply improve and prices stabilize, many construction projects and the lives of people who depend on them will remain on hold. Maimuna Ba, Africa Matters, Banjul, the Gambia.
To Nigeria's biggest city, Lagos, which is growing fast and with it a demand for sand. Dredging has been expanding across the city's lagoon, but in waterfront communities like Makoko, residents say the changes are affecting daily life and livelihoods. Kubra Akoch reports.
These men are excavating for a resource that's in high demand. Their buckets are pulling sand out the water. That sand is used to build houses and roads across the city.
After getting this place might get deep. We can't be able to work here again, so we move to another location.
In Makoko, one of Lagos's oldest fishing communities, large boats dredge close to homes built over the water. For some, dredging is their main source of income, earning them about $8 per boatload.
We are approved from government, so after we pay our dues, we are free to work.
Workers say more sand is needed as the megacity of about 17 million people continues to grow. But not everyone is happy.
You know, we are not powerful. Dredgers have spoiled the entire waters. If we say we want to do any fishing now, all of the places where dredging activities happen, there is no fish there anymore. The fish flee at the loud sounds of the engines. All of the areas where the fish usually breed have been completely overtaken by dredgers.
Lagos state officials say they are shutting down illegal sand digging. But community leaders argue enforcement is uneven, and that's affecting people's livelihoods.
We have no other work apart from fishing. If we don't fish to catch, then we will starve.
Some researchers support the fishermen's concerns. Apart from muddying the water and pushing fish away, they warn that dredging weakens protections against the heavy flooding the city often faces. As Lagos keeps developing, so do the concerns of people who live and depend on the Makoko Lagoon. Kübra Akoç, Africa Matters.
That's our show this week. Let us know how Trump's policies are affecting you by leaving your comments on our Africa Matters YouTube page or on X. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Brenda Zeda Radido.